So,
it's a much more sort of pedestrian question in a way. How did you, John Hurt feels to me that the most phenomenal performance. Did you always have him in mind? I mean,
Yes.
he is very much the sort of, in fact, I can't separate him out from Winston
no.
in my mind now. That's when I read the book.
I mean, there were three people I really had to get hold of before, really. Winston, O'Brien, Julia, and Big Brother. Casting John, I actually went up to him, I remember, at a
Party.
at a party, it's a prize, one of those prizes you win standard awards or something, and I said, John, if you don't do this movie, I'm not going to do it. And he said, fair enough, I'll do it. Big Brother was a fantastic escapade. We ran a competition in The Guardian for anybody who thought they looked like Big Brother. And we got 100,000 photographs. And eventually I chose a man. It's impossible, Big Brother was impossible in the end, but I chose a man who was actually a small, part-time clown comedian who'd just come back from the Falklands where he'd been entertaining the troops. And he just had this way of staring, this sort of way of, this bulging eyes, I don't know what it was. But so he won the prize. The most amazing thing about it was that he was a Guardian reader. I don't, you know. He was and O'Brien was a catalogue of disasters. This would never happen today. This would never, ever, ever happen today. But we didn't actually cast O'Brien finally until we were 6 weeks into shooting. We'd been shooting for 6 weeks. Okay. If you can imagine that the financiers, people didn't know who was playing one of the major roles in the film. And I remember my producer coming to me and saying, don't worry, Michael, you know, if nobody else plays him, I will. What happened was that we offered it first to Sean Connery. And Sean Connery, then, you know, hummed and hawed, and actually, terrified, walked away from it. He literally kept us going on the go for about 6 or 7 weeks, and then I realised that just those long speeches, torturing him and everything, he just couldn't, he wasn't going to cope with it. So he left the situation, and then we offered it to Paul Schofield, who broke his leg. So then we offered it to Rod Steiger, okay, who just had a facelift. And I received this telegram, which I have to this day, which said, Dear Mr. Radford, this is Rod Steiger's assistant speaking. I'm afraid Mr. Steiger will not be able to play the role of Brian in 1984 because his facelift has just fallen. So that was him. Then we offered it to Marlon Brando. And his agent, we didn't have a lot of money, we had actually $80,000 to pay the main character. Which seems a lot of money, but it wasn't to those kind of guys. Particularly, as Marlon Brando's agent said, do you realise that Mr. Brando does not get out of bed for less than $1 million a day? To which Simon Perry, bless his heart, my producer, said, oh, he's given up serious acting then. That was the end of Marlon Brando. And then we finally, in desperation, thought of offering it to Richard Burton. But now, this wasn't because he wasn't a good actor, it's because he was a notorious drunk. And he was a man of absolute, nobody could trust him, nobody could insure him, nobody could do anything. And anyway, he lived in Haiti, which later he claimed he lived there because it was the only place where nobody recognised him. Whatever he said, you have to take it with a salt. And only one plane a week went to Haiti. So we flew him in the script and then waited a week and then he came back with his answer. And he arrived. And he was absolutely charming. He gave up drinking throughout the entire shoot. And he had this friend called Brooke Williams, who was Brookie, who was a fellow drunk, basically, who used to bring him an open can of Diet Pepsi onto the set like this and hand it to him. And Richard would then hand it to me and say, "Would you care for a drop?" And I would drink it, taste it, make sure there was no vodka in it. And then I would hand it back to him and continue on. And he behaved himself amazingly. His legendary memory had completely gone. So we had to have, cue cards everywhere, written on, John Hurt's forehead and stuff like that. Seriously, I'm not kidding. It was quite something. Just, I have to tell you the story because
it was absolutely last performance.
It was, yes.
It was absolutely last performance. When did he die?
He died about 2 weeks after we finished. Yeah. He was a sick man. He was he's the sort of life had gone out of him. Really. He was.
Is it the film that in the film?
Yes, you do.
It's very great.
Yeah.
In fact, it's all about it being slightly sort of,
Yeah.
no water.
No.
It's drenched. It's drained.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was. But I he was a towering figure. I mean, he was the most charismatic person. And while I was making the film, actually, 3 women arrived at the gates of Pinewood Studios claiming to be Elizabeth Taylor. None of them. Anyway, I took on the job of directing him, basically. And I knew that guys like that, for a long time, had not been directed. People are terrified of them. And the one thing you mustn't be is terrified of them, because they're actors, they need directing. So we're doing the torture scenes and stuff. And we're doing the shots where he's looking at John Hurt, and inevitably we have to move John Hurt out of the way and stick the camera there. And we put a little yellow cross on the camera, and he looks at that. And he wasn't doing it very convincingly. In fact, he was doing it very unconvincingly, sort of milky look. And I kept saying, we'll do it again. And so suddenly he said, "Stop!" And he said, "You don't like the way I look, do you?" And I said, "No, it's not that much. It's just, this." He said, "You don't like the way I look." And he marched off the set. Frozen. Everybody's frozen in silence. Disappeared for about half an hour. And the producers all running around, telephone calls going like this, what's happening, the budget of the movie, horrible things going on. And finally he walked back onto the set again, carrying a little box. And he said, "Go on," he said, "open it, it's for you." So right in front of all the crew, I opened this box, and in the box there was a prize. It was a crystal ball on sort of a plinth. And he said, "Go on," he said, "read the inscription." And the inscription read, "To Richard Burton, the 1983 award for the world's most beautiful eyes from the American Ophthalmic Association." He said, "You can have that."